So many unimaginable things happen on a daily basis. One such unimaginable thing is us hitting 100 followers on Instagram. We're currently at 85 on YouTube, so let's get that to 100. Speaking of unimaginable things, energy from ocean waves is quite unimaginable, and here we have Narayan to tell us more about it, so stick around till the end of the episode to find out. Let's roll the intro.
Essentially, the problem that society is having right now is heavy intermittency or fluctuations in current renewable technology. We all want to go renewable, but wind and solar are highly intermittent, right? So you just imagine if you could only run your washing machine when the wind is blowing, or if you could only turn the lights on when the sun is shining. This sounds absurd, but this is actually the problem with current renewable technology. You still need a lot of fossil fuels for stability, and this is actually hindering the clean energy transition. So what the world needs is a clean energy source that can anchor the grid with a lot of stability. That is wave energy. My name is Narayan Iyer, and I'm the founder and CEO of Laminar Scientific. Ocean is 75% of the world, right? There's tremendous amount of coastline that you can capture energy. And the energy is a very stable form. So we know those three incredible advantages. But you might be wondering, why isn't ocean energy more prevalent in the world?
Who is your customer?
The dire need that we saw.
How much area do you really need to produce significant amount of energy?
Ocean energy density is about 300 times more than solar. So essentially, the problem that society is having right now is heavy intermittency or fluctuations in current renewable technology. We all want to go renewable, but wind and solar are highly intermittent, right? So you just imagine if you could only run your washing machine when the wind is blowing, or if you could only turn the lights on when the sun is shining. This sounds absurd, but this is actually the problem with current renewable technology. You still need a lot of fossil fuels for stability, and this is actually hindering the clean energy transition. So what the world needs is a clean energy source that can anchor the grid with a lot of stability. That is wave energy. Ocean energy. I mean, if you're an electrical engineer, or if you have any knowledge in electrical on the electrical side, ocean energy or ocean waves, kind of act like a capacitor. This is an analogy, okay? Kind of act like a capacitor. The wind blows over the waves. And the wind is erratic, right? It's an erratic source, but the water is like the capacitor that captures this wind and outputs a very steady source that is super predictable, and that is what we are capturing. Wind-powered waves, or wind-driven waves are what we are capturing.
Yeah, Let's roll it back. Let's roll it back all the way to the beginning.
Okay.
Who are you? Let's start with who are you?
My name is Narayan Iyer, and I'm the founder and CEO of Laminar Scientific. I graduated from Purdue University, same like Vishrud, and but I studied aeronautical engineering, and I worked in the aerospace field for 6 years. And they kind of it was a great job. It was a lot of fun, in Collins Aerospace. But I felt like my focus really needed to be in clean energy. It was always on the back of my mind. I wish I was working on clean energy. I need to be working on clean energy. This was kind of like an urgent thing that I always wanted to do. But I feel like COVID kind of was like the great reset for everyone. Kind of just, gave people I mean, of course, COVID was a terribly tragic thing, but it also gave people the opportunity to kind of step back from life a little bit and say, okay, what are my real priorities? What do I really want to do? And restart a career based on, and that's where you saw the great resignation, right? So everyone started resigning. People wanted to do something different, do something that they love. And that's what happened to me as well. So I had these ideas in the back burner. I had a lot of extra time to just jot it out and get patents and build some prototypes, bring it to conferences, and marine energy conferences really loved it. They thought that it was a very fresh perspective from an aeronautical engineering side into this new field, and the the guys in this field were like, that's a fresh perspective, and it could be, it's so different that we got to try it out. It might just work. So that's how it kind of cascaded into a company, into a startup, into Department of Energy grants, and so forth. So
Akhil and I love talking about energy. Before we started talking to founders, our episodes always had some energy aspect or the other. We are one of those who you would say are very passive observers of clean energy, and we're clean energy enthusiasts without having the expertise. We've often spoken about, dude, we should do something with battery technology. We're so fascinated by it. How did you take the leap? What was the expertise that you had or that you gained that helped you move from aeronautical engineering to now clean energy? How did you make that switch?
Yeah, so I would say that, it was kind of invention driven, right? So I was just like, oh, I have a cool idea. Let me see if we can solve this problem this way, right? So I drew it out and, wanted to test it out, prototype it, and started a company. And then the funny thing is, after we talked to customers, after we talked to island communities and a lot of different types of customers, we completely scrapped that initial idea. And and we were thinking, okay, maybe we still have it in like as an efficiency thing. Maybe in the future we can implement, but like our priorities completely changed, but we found a new design that would really cater to them. But in terms of expertise, there was a learning curve, right? So going from aeronautical to hydrodynamics, basically it's there's a lot of similarity, of course, fluid mechanics and all that kind of stuff, fluid dynamics, but there was still a learning curve, and what I decided to do was, instead of learning it myself, I decided to hire people who know this and partner with the people who know this. Like in National Renewable Energy Labs, we just signed a partnership agreement on a particular project, funded by the DOE. So my strategy is to hire the right people who know these things, and I feel like I'm a really good engineering lead, and that's really my strong suit. And me having to do everything would not be very good for the company. So
Vishwat and I are like chimps, right? We're idiots and we don't understand a lot of what happens in the world. So why don't you break down the absolute essence of what an aeronautical engineer does and what you are doing now, how it is different, how it is similar? Like for a 4-year-old, think of us like as baby. Let's go there.
That's a very good question. That's a very hard question, because aeronautical engineering is literally mechanical engineering, and you know how broad. I don't know if you guys, you were an electrical engineer or a computer scientist.
I was in computer science,
but you have to assume we know nothing.
Okay,
because our viewers might not know anything.
We don't know anything. We actually genuinely, I'm saying we don't
know
anything about this field. And as I said, we are enthusiasts from like that far point of view. We're like, oh my God, this is so cool.
Yeah.
We have no clue how any of it works.
Okay. So it's a very good question to ask. How did aeronautical engineering, how is that different from this? So the basics in aeronautical engineering, and this is a hard question to answer because aeronautical engineering is mechanical engineering. The breadth of mechanical engineering goes all the way from statics, dynamics to even some coding, some simulation work. Like it's so broad, right? You get a huge broad major essentially that's thrown into you in 4 years, and that's that. And aeronautical is exactly like that, but in the context of airplanes. So literally same exact thing, but in the context of, in fact, many universities, they don't call it aeronautical, they just call it mechanical engineering with the focus on aerospace. I believe, some of the best universities do exactly that. So, Purdue, really specialized in aerospace. What I studied in aerospace, I specialized in controls. Okay, controls with still they give you you get the whole breadth. I specialize in controls and design. Now, design is interesting because design is really just taking everything. It's systems engineering. That's what it is. Systems engineering. So it takes, you have a team, and it's very good for like leadership, right? So if you're leading an engineering team and you're a technical leader, you're essentially taking all these different skills, bringing it together into one system. So you have the aerodynamics, you have structures, you have the you have the power, propulsion system. You're bringing it all into one thing, and you're seeing how all of them play together, and you're creating one symbiotic system that works together, that is optimized all together. All these different factors are optimized. And they all work together, and you have this system that's hyper efficient and carries 200 people from one place to another very safely. And so that's design. That's aerospace design, and that was my favorite class. And that was my favorite. That was my favorite specialization. So it was a set of classes, and that really translated toward anything. Right, you learned it in the context of airplanes. That really goes to So I led software teams at Collins Aerospace, and then I led like a platform team which has software and hardware. And when it came to Laminar Scientific, same thing. Basically, there's the hydrodynamics parts, there's structures part, all these different things coming together. And I'm hiring accordingly, partnering accordingly for people to specialize in those things, bring it to me, or bring it to the systems engineer, or work with the systems engineer, who will then integrate everything together. And so that is one key similarity that translates through all these different fields of engineering. So yeah, that's how it came to be.
I feel it's even broader. It's even broader than just fields of engineering, because what you're talking about is very entrepreneurial, right? It is, if you're in a company, if you're running the company, you have the marketing, you have the finance, you have the operations, you have this, you have that, you have 500 teams who are going to be working under you in case you actually scale, right? So I love how these concepts like go hand in hand, and not just there. Even when you do finance, if you're just in finance of a company, then you have a number of different aspects that you have to look at. And despite that, all of them have to work together. You have to hire accordingly. You have to build teams accordingly. And it's beautiful how it all plays out.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right there. In fact, like I know one other systems engineer who became an entrepreneur. And he just kind of, it was a clean transition to an entrepreneurial role. But yeah, that's very well said. It really applies to other parts of life. And yeah.
You all loved the intro for Narayan's video, and you gave it so much positive feedback on LinkedIn. So do the same here and hit that like button. So I was taking it back to say that this is one of the few times where you actually hear school training you for real life. Usually from most entrepreneurs, from most people, you hear this whole thing that, oh, yes, you have done XYZ degree, but how much has it actually trained you for the real world? And here you can very proudly say that it was your degree, it was your major, it was your specialization that trained you in a way that suited you to become an entrepreneur, to pursue the thing that eventually you were interested in.
Yeah, I mean, one thing with Purdue, I would say Purdue was exceptional, right? Purdue is definitely exceptional. Of course, Purdue taught me to learn. Like their whole, even in engineering, they were like, here's how you learn, and here are the resources, and here's how You can set a goal that is bigger than what you know, and then learn to that goal. That kind of blew my mind. In many engineering projects, it was like, dang, okay, that's. But of course, it really depends. It's not a case by case basis. In terms of running a business, like no one tells you how you're gonna get screwed. Lawyers are gonna screw you, right? Like I'll be honest with you. Like you find the wrong lawyer, they're gonna try and screw you. I mean, most lawyers are gonna try and screw you. No offense against lawyers. Like I'm just saying, like that's the structure of
You're basing it off your experiences, my friend. So
Yeah,
you're entitled to your opinion.
yeah. But I'm just giving you an example, right? There are people out there who are gonna actively try to screw you, and that those kind of things you just gotta learn.
You
on
have
the
to
way.
adapt and overcome, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's have one of your experiences on the podcast with a lawyer.
Well, okay. So for like one simple form, okay, lawyers will make it such that you are dependent on them, right? So every form has to come from them. You sign a power of attorney, and so how patent law works is you file a patent. Okay, you draft a whole patent, file it. It goes to the patent office. The patent office then examines it, gives you an office action. In 95% of cases, get you an office action, which is, hey, I can't patent it like this. You got to make these changes, or these particular areas are not patentable. So you then respond. You tailor it. You respond. You send it back to them. So the interesting thing is, there's a lot of back and forth, right? And they charge you for each back and forth. Okay, that's fine. But like even like simple paperwork and things like getting your patent, you've done all the work. Like it all works out. At the end, you had to sign something that says, okay, I want my patent. Like you get the issuance. That costs $1,500. It's literally one form, okay? It's one tiny little form and a couple of check boxes, and it costs $1,500. It's just one example. It's kind of hard to think about the right examples, and sometimes it's like they don't really try. It depends, right? Some of my current patent lawyer and the one that I'm working in India, fantastic. She's great. But in general, like what I've seen, overall, it's kind of like it's like a vulture. They really try to pull everything out of you. And
He's like, let me protect myself from my current lawyer first. So I'm gonna say she's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that came from a very genuine space, because after being picked at by vultures, I think he's now found someone who he's comfortable with.
Exactly. After several iterations of trying, like this is like I honed in on these guys that are fair and that are good and that actually want to see us succeed.
Bro, I've experienced this as well, and this whole thing of people wanting to make themselves dependent, like everything that they do is dependent on them being there. I think it eventually comes from a space of insecurity, because they're insecure about their job or their client base or something like that. So it's also a very mental thing there. So I guess this is something that they have also learned over time, that, unless we are making everything super dependent on us, our client might not want us, go through us again, or they might try to undercut us or something like that. So I guess there is some sort of justification, however, mucky and molded and whatever, however, twisted it is, there is a justification in their head as well. However, I completely understand when you say that, it's so annoying to work with people like that, because whenever you do see the work that they've given you or something that they've given you, it's always so weird. It's so muddled. It's so unnecessarily complicated that only they can then untangle that web. And then you are dependent on them to be like, hey, can you please help me out?
Yeah.
It does damage long-term relationships though, right? So if your lawyer does actively try to screw you over, and you have the feeling that my lawyer is trying to actively try trying to screw me over. You're not going to hire the same lawyer again when the next time you need a lawyer. And if your company's going to, last for as long as it will, then that's going to be an issue.
It really depends
For the
on how
lawyers.
savvy you are, right? It really depends on how savvy you are. So a lot of people are counting on you not being very savvy, right? So for instance, the wording of a patent, right? They would make it, okay, it's good to make it really broad, 100% agreed. But in one scenario, for instance, they made it super broad, okay, to the point where it was clear that it was going to violate a patent that already exists and that we are already declaring. You had to declare every patent that you've read in the past that relates to your technology. But essentially, they count on those office actions. They want an office action to come back and they want the patents to get rejected, a couple of times in order to then generate their revenue. But yeah, it's all, it's a culture of customer retention and like recurring revenue, right? That's the whole model that keeps them dependent. And the whole subscription model also came to be in other industries where you subscribe and then you forget, and they're counting on you to forget, to cancel. You have a free trial, they're counting on you to cancel. And it makes it really hard sometimes to go and find the cancel button. So that kind of thing is like, it's a part of the business culture, which sucks because that's not a genuine merit-based business strategy. It's just screwing people over. That's the strategy.
Dude,
So,
I also think it boils
yeah.
down a lot to this concept that we've spoken of a couple of times called ignorance debt. They're preying on the fact that you don't know any better and you are not making that effort to take that extra step and learn that thing to know better yourself. So they're like, whoever is taking that step, so like, for example, like you've taken that step and you've learned and you've understood and you're like, okay, yeah, this is where they're screwing me over. There might be people who are like, you know what, we don't care. We are not willing to take that extra step and learn that thing for ourselves. So they're just preying on that. At the end of the day, that is their way of making their bread and butter.
So we got it from this guy called Alex Hormozy, who we have again mentioned numerous times on the podcast. And he says that he bought his website from this guy, right? And every time he wanted to make a change in the website person would cost him like $2,000. That you want to make a change, $2,000, right? And he's like, over a span of 2 years or so, I paid like 5 figures to the guy to make like small changes to a website. 2 years later, he's like, I decided, what are these guys doing that I can't do? And I'm going to sit 5 Sundays in a row and give 4 hours to my website on every Sunday. And I'm going to learn how to replicate the exact website that they've made for me. And he's like, I was able to replicate it in 2 hours. So he's like, for those 2 hours, I paid like 5 figures just for those 2 hours, right? So now that you have experience with patent law, you filed your own, COVID comes in, you think I'm going to invent something and I'm going to start filing patents, and you know nothing about patents, right? So what do you do? What are the steps to learn to file your own patent?
So here's the thing, right? Like, don't file your own patent, right? That's a risky thing to do because you might be wasting your invention. I did a lot of reading just for my own interest prior to the business, and because I had patents in Collins Aerospace as well. I wouldn't suggest an entrepreneur do that because they may be like risking, and I've seen that. I've seen them risking their patent, risking their invention. What I would say is do a lot of research on who you're hiring, like a tremendous amount of research on who you're hiring. Any hire that you make, call references, any firm that you're working with, like really double check the reviews and everything, because some guy would write a review saying these guys screwed me over. And if that is repeatable, like if it's one guy, it may not be good, but it may not be a good source. But if it's multiple people that said these guys have screwed me over, like there's a patent lawyer in where I live in Iowa, who and here's what I learned in a difficult way. And this is the person, this is the group that I've been talking about. These guys had to change the name of their company, and I didn't know about this. Okay, had to change the name of their firm multiple times because of losing face. Like they've completely lost face several times. They had to rebrand in order to stay in business. And I wish I knew about that. I wish I had done a lot more research. I wish I had called around instead of saying, "Oh, I want my invention going." Like I wish I had really done that research before I found that lawyer, and and gone forward with it. So, that's very important. It's such a simple rule. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. But sometimes you're so excited to start the business, scale the business really fast, and you just get and you won't do the due diligence that you need to do. So that really matters. But in general, just stay vigilant about getting screwed over. It can happen in any facet, right? It can happen like any contractor can screw you, or any like entity can screw you over, or even sometimes your employee can. We have fantastic employees, we love them, but I'm just saying, like, it's possible. I can see a possibility where even your own teammates can screw you over. So just stay vigilant. Build trust and get people who you trust, and trust but verify, and that should be the rule across the board. So and these kind of things you don't learn in school, right? You don't learn this in school. Maybe like sometimes you can. Like one thing Purdue did well is they always had school project, like senior design project, where you work with like NASA or some Boeing, NASA, somebody, DoD, and you're working in real life scenarios. So that was pretty good. But yeah, I mean, some of these soft skills you just don't learn. And you just learn through experience.
Yeah, I think the basic takeaway is do your due diligence, make sure you have everything covered. And this whole thing of trust, it's a very, a lot of people will be like, "Oh, but he's my friend. I don't want to get into this whole legal thing and stuff like that." But you also have to realize at some point in time, your own judgment has to come into play. He might be a great friend, but if he screwed you over a couple of times, or like, that he has this little gray to him, then you have to make sure that you are vigilant enough that again, that is something that you learn through experience. And it's just, I don't know, it's a very, very, very shaky platform, because, you start becoming too untrusting, and like, you start doing too much due diligence, and even that's not a great thing. And then you can't trust anybody, but then you shouldn't go the other way as well. It's like a very, very precarious thing.
One of the things that one must always do is NDAs, between internally, not necessarily externally as well, depending upon who you're talking to. But internally, when you're hiring somebody or when you're partnering with somebody, NDAs are important, even if it's your best friend. Setting terms, very important, right? Like, here are the terms. This is the amount of equity. So if you are doing an equity share or equity incentive, like, this is the amount of equity. This is how it's going to grow, or this is how it's going to be. And then hash it out at earlier stages, right? Hash it out before you start working. What your roles are going to be, what the incentives are going to look like, what is it going to look like? Like, is there going to be, vesting period and all that kind of stuff? Set it straight early on, and you don't have to worry about it. And, then you're not going to have the fight of, hey, I contributed this much. Like, why I need to have this much equity. This has happened not to me, but I, like, in the Techstars community, like, I know of companies that have gone through exactly this, and, they break up. Company makes up, great idea, great product, but they break up because founders can't get along. So the legal stuff, it's important. Even if it's your best friend, even if you know the person very much, like, legal stuff is super important, just to set the terms and then never look at the terms. Like, you never worry about it. Not necessarily never look at it, but never worry about it. So anyway.
85 subscribers. It's your job to make it 100. Go hit that subscribe button down below. It's a big red button. You cannot miss it. Subscribe now.
Let's get to the tech. Let's talk about what exactly are you doing. and let's
Okay.
see that shine on your face and let's
Yes,
go.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, enough talk
Enough.
about due diligence. Let's get to the
Yeah.
meat of it. Let's get to the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
Enough with the
fantastic.
sad talk. Yeah. Let's go.
Fantastic. Now, the biggest issues with ocean energy. Now, there's a great advantage. Ocean is 75% of the world, right? There's a tremendous amount of coastline that you can capture energy from. And the energy is a very stable form. So we know those three incredible advantages. But you might be wondering, like, why isn't ocean energy more prevalent in the world at the moment? You see wind and solar all in a lot of places, but you don't see wave. And that is primarily because I would say that's because we're built for land, right? Humans are built for land. And it's very hard for us to, current ocean energy systems are very hard to install. Like you need to use some heavy equipment. You might need to go underwater with drones, divers. All of that actually makes it, more expensive, significantly expensive. They're hard to maintain. Imagine maintaining something at sea when it's moving. And it's also hard to, to survive a storm. Sometimes they're built like a tank. Okay, so they're overbuilt, so that costs a lot of money. Kind of imagine like if you to drive to work, you're driving a Humvee or a giant armored truck because you're scared of an accident. It's not sensible, and it's also very expensive. So we really attacked these three problems. Like we really worked with the customer, sat with the customer, and really solved exactly those three problems in order to open access into this incredible abundant energy source.
Sorry, just really quick before we get into it. Who is your customer? Who are the current customers, if you can disclose that?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. So the market is huge, right? So you have coastal cities across the world, and as well as island communities. Now, the dire need that we saw, was with island communities. These guys have extremely high energy costs that it's easy for us to compete with those costs, even at a very early stage. So, for instance, right, so these guys have really high energy costs because they need to ship in diesel. So think about it. You're living in an island community. You don't have a main grid that you can just plug into. You need to ship in diesel. So there's a huge logistical burden. Sometimes the shipment doesn't come through. So we've been talking to island communities first. Those are our early customers that we're starting with. And then we'll go to coastal cities. We'll go elsewhere. But these guys, sometimes they miss their meetings because their energy shipment didn't come in. So you see the dire need there. You go out of power if your shipment doesn't come in. Schools close, businesses close. Terribly dire need. So by capturing energy that's all around them, waves are all around them. By capturing it, we give them energy independence. Okay, so that dire need is there, and that's who we're talking to. So we're talking to people in Southeast Asia. We're talking to people in West Africa, in Department of Energy in Cabo Verde, and and Hawaii as well. So we're talking to several different people. We have a customer now at Southeast Asia, but in general, the problem that we see is most islanders, they're not expected to have heavy equipment. So that is the most important problem. So initially, our system was designed for like a very highly efficient energy generation methodology, and that still applies maybe in the future, but that doesn't solve the core issue of access. So that's what we want to start with. That's what we want to solve first. And that's access. So we designed a system that can be easily installed at the sea surface. You don't need drones, divers. You don't have to look underwater. Everything at the sea surface. You can also uninstall it at the sea surface, bring it to shore. Now, the good thing about that is you can service it, maintain it at shore instead of maintaining it at sea, because it's very easy to just pull it back. Installation is very easy. The smallest of operators can do it. You can just tug it, install it at the sea surface, and you can see that in the video here. So that was our first, the solution, the system to the problem. So The other aspect of this, so this is, you're seeing the video right now. It's a device that basically cups it's like a cup, okay? It's a cup that faces the oncoming wave, okay? And as the waves hit it, it moves, right? So it's pretty simplistic, pretty simple to understand there. And when it moves, you're powering generators. Essentially, the whole system, the cup and everything, has 5 times less moving parts than existing systems. So that also, in a hostile ocean environment, if you have much fewer moving parts, the good thing is much less can go wrong, right? So, and much less needs to be maintained. So this was really, again, an islander-centric perspective. Like, how do we really work with them and design for them? And then finally, so you can see the prototype, working in the water here. Finally, the final feature, the third feature, is that the cup opens up when the force gets too extreme. So that's another key feature there. If the cup opens up, it lets the water through. So if an excess pressure builds, it lets the water through, and it's pretty straightforward to understand that. I mean, it's like you're running like this versus you're running like this. So you're much more streamlined. So that's what ends up happening when the cup opens up. You become much more streamlined and you don't absorb all that force, and you're surviving the extreme conditions. And
you're basically self-regulating.
Yeah, self-regulating. So think about, instead of driving an armored truck to work, you're driving an efficient car that has safety features like seatbelts and airbags. So much more cost effective. That's what we're doing in this device.
2 questions.
Yeah.
2 questions that I have. One of them is, how much area do you really need to produce significant amount of energy, which can actually run a house? The second question is money. Sounds costly. Sounds expensive.
So that's a very good point. So first, the ocean energy density is about 300 times more than solar. Okay. So think about it this way. Here's another analogy. I love analogies. You're walking outside during the day. Okay. You're just taking a walk. The wind blows. You're not going to fly off, or you're not going to get moved by the wind. You're going to be like, oh man, it's windy. Your hair is going to move, but you're not going to. But you're walking in the water. A wave hits you. It'll move you. Okay. It is so much more dense. Okay. So you don't need as big a system to capture a viable amount of energy. So that's the key advantage of wave energy. In addition to the steadiness, it's also extremely dense. So it's actually 63 times more dense than wind, 300 times more dense than solar. That's those are the average numbers there. Now, it depends on your use case, right? So we are developing an island system, okay, that supplies, each system supplies about 75 homes. And we're also developing, and then later on we'll develop a much larger system. That's in our roadmap. But an island system, 75 homes, it's about 40 kilowatts, and it has a 6-meter wingspan, 5.5 meter wingspan. So that's the manta wave that you saw earlier. You can pull up the image here, but it's a 5.5 meter wingspan that will supply 75 homes.
That's not a lot. 5.5 meters is nothing.
Yeah, so it's a tiny system that supplies a huge number of houses, and that's really the promise of the energy density that the ocean supplies.
Have you been able to achieve it successfully?
In a prototype scale, yes. In a simulation scale, yes. But we're still having to scale that up. And we have a paid pilot now with a Southeast Asian energy company, and we're going forward with them to do a pilot project, build a 5.5 meter system, put it in the water, and go from there. We designed the system to not have any custom-made complex components. So basically the whole concept is unique, right? But the components that make up the device are simple. So a bunch of simple systems come together and make up this novel system. And that allows us to keep manufacturing costs low. And of course, operation costs end up being low as well because of, surface level connections, less number of moving parts, easy maintenance, and bring it back to shore. So overall, we're reducing cost from manufacturing to O&M, operations and maintenance, and that's what our key value proposition is, and we can actually compete. And basically, our simulations, our extrapolations, calculations have shown that we can bring down the energy costs by almost 56%. It depends on the island community, of course. It depends on the different islands. But the islands that we're looking at can bring it down to 56%. That's our plus minus.
So you guys are pre-revenue right now. Is that
we
correct?
are? So interesting thing is, we are. So currently, our product is the patent license. Okay, and the Southeast Asian Energy Company has bought the patent license. We are actually hitting revenue, and we found that this is a good way to de-risk hardware. Because hardware is a complex business, but we found a way to de-risk hardware, form critical partnerships, key partnerships. So they bought it for Southeast Asia exclusively, and essentially that allows us to build the traction before we actually manufacture and sell products. So that'll be a later thing. So hardware as a product is going to be a later stage in our company after we de-risk in a different way. Yeah.
How is this connecting to shore? Like, what is the connection from the ocean to the shore? How deep out in the ocean? How far out in the ocean is it? And what is the effect, if any, on marine life?
Yeah, no, very good question. So one, it's about 1,000 feet away from shore, so about 200 meters away from shore. So it's not that far, and you can use a sea cable to bring it back to shore. A simple sea cable to bring it back to shore, because 1,000 feet is really not. It doesn't require a very complex cable, and so simple cable brings it back to shore and connects to connects to an inverter and then the local grid. So you might be wondering, how is he talking about the idea so much? Now, one thing is, we have some really powerful patents, and that allows us, to really, start discussing these ideas and bringing it out to the public domain, because we're so confident with our patents and our patenting strategy. So, yeah. But yeah, we bring it back to shore, and connect to the main grid or to the local grids. And that produces steady energy, much steadier than other renewables at the time. Of course, nuclear fission or fusion would be the steadiest, but that's going to be for a long time, and it's not going to hit island communities at all.
So you finished up Purdue. You worked for 6 years at an aerospace company, and then you are sitting in your house during COVID, and you decide that I'm going to file for this patent. I'm going to be an inventor, and I'm going to start this company. Right? It's been 3 years now. So how do you quit your job? You have a very nice, heavy-paying job, and suddenly you're like, you know what, snap, it's gone. I don't have any more financial resources to work out.
That's a very good question, man. That's a very good question. It's a delicate balance, right? I would say America is a very cutthroat place, okay, where everything, especially with the inflation period that's been happening recently. I mean, that's affecting all over the world, but in America, your health insurance costs $300 a month. If you don't have health insurance and you get sick, you're screwed. You're dead. Okay, you don't go to the doctor because you'll go bankrupt and you'll never see the light of day. So
that's why you moved to Canada.
Yeah, that's why you go to Canada. So, as an entrepreneur it's hard to be an entrepreneur in the US. I'll tell you that much. It is very hard to be an entrepreneur. I would say, what I did was I didn't quit my job for a long time, right? I was just tinkering with the ideas. I formed a company. I was like, I had employees and everything, and I was paying my employees, but I couldn't pay myself. So I had to have another job. So I was working like 80, 90, close to 100 hours sometimes. And it it was a difficult time, but it was also exciting. So I wouldn't say it was like hard. I mean, it was hard, but I wouldn't say it was like a bad time in my life. I would say it's a very hard time. I wouldn't suggest doing entrepreneurship for the sake of doing entrepreneurship, right? Like I see a lot of people do that in general. It's fucking hard, man. It's fucking hard.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. This is, now we have gotten to the core of Narayan. The PR, I have to respect my lawyer, my employees. That Narayan is out, and now we've got to the crux. I love it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say don't do it if you don't have a product. So it needs to be product driven. Like you need to have such a good product that you're gonna kick yourself for not bringing it to the world, right? You're gonna be like, crap, what am I doing? Not bringing this to the world. That, during your normal job, and you feel like that on a daily basis. That's when you are poised to be an entrepreneur. But even then, you could fail. Okay, you can do all the things right.
Our episode with Kali is making waves in the fashion world. Did you share that with your friends? If not, share that and share this as well. Go, share it. How do you convince yourself that it is a product that is worth, bringing to the world? Because any idea you have, any idea that anybody has, not just you, but I would say you, me, any other person in the world, if they have an idea, if they have suddenly they go like, oh shit, we must do this. It seems like the most important thing in the world. It seems like if I don't get this out there, what am I doing? So how do you quantify that with reality? Like how did you go about convincing yourself that, oh shit, this is an idea that I have to take?
Yeah. So, okay, let me start somewhere else, if I may, but I'll come to your point for sure. I've seen a lot of people, okay, in general, thinking I'm going to be an entrepreneur and that's what I want. I want to work for myself, and then they're like, okay, let me think of ideas to support that goal, and get there, right? And they'll come up with an idea and they'll be like, okay, this is what I'm going to pursue because that's what will get me to my goal. But I feel like, and I might be wrong, it could work, and it may, in many cases may have worked. But in terms of in my opinion, in terms of the mental health behind, or not mental health, but like just the drive and you could say mental health and like keeping it going. I would say it has to come from a place where it's like, okay, I can be an entrepreneur if I want to, but I'm not an entrepreneur. But and then you come up with this incredible product. And you're like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur now because I want to bring this to the world, no matter what it takes. That is a much more organic, much more powerful, motivated. Your motivation wouldn't run out. I mean, it will, but still, it will at times. Your motivation will be tested, but it won't run out. It'll be tested 100%. It'll definitely be tested every day, right? But it won't run out. I've seen a lot of startups fail because they're like, I'm going to be a startup founder, and they come up with an idea and they're like, okay, I'm going to scrap this because, and startups fail. So like 90% of the startups fail. And by no means am I saying that the organic method will definitely succeed, but it just has a much more powerful foundation, a very passionate foundation. Investors want to see passion. Everybody wants to see passion, right? And anyone who is supporting your startup wants to see passion in the founders. So that's it's much more likely to last through the harder period of time when you believe in your product in that way. So, and that's really, I'm not just these are my thoughts. That's true, but I've kind of tested these exact thoughts with a lot of, I've been part of 2 accelerators now, and I've kind of tested that with multiple accelerators. Like I've seen founders not sure what their idea is, but they want to have an idea. They've had the idea fail, not failed, but just like thrown it. Had the idea, thrown it. Had the idea. As soon as the first hurdle comes into place, they throw it, right? But who is going to talk to 100 VCs and accept the one investment that makes it all worth it, right? Get 99 rejections, or 95 rejections and 5 investments that make it all worth it. Who's going to do that? Only the founder that really believes in their product and will do whatever it takes to bring it out into the world, because they feel like the world needs this, or else. And those are the guys who are going to, or guys or women, guys and gals who are going to work through the 100 VCs and get the 5 acceptances. Otherwise, you're going to talk to 20, fail, and then go. Yeah.
Clearly, you feel very strongly that the world needs ocean energy, right?
Yes.
So what are the limitations? There's always like the dark side of things, right? What are the limitations to your invention or to ocean energy in general?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, it is a harder environment, and you need to have clever inventions to circumvent that harder environment. So that way it becomes a more difficult engineering problem than other sources of energy. I would say, the limitation always is, the ultimate limitation is, even ocean energy being super predictable and super steady will have some level of fluctuation, and you still need some sort of balancing form of technology, right? So, like, you need a backup. That's, so say you have a storage system. It doesn't have to be as high of, if you're using wind and solar only, you will need a lot of storage. If you're using wave energy, you need much less storage. So you need a small amount of storage, but you still need that storage. If you're using straight fossil fuels, then you don't need storage, because you can burn the fuel at the right times, and that's it.
I mean, fossil fuels are the storage, right? Fossil fuels are themselves the storage of energy that has been compressed over a very long period of time. So you need the storage of fossil fuels themselves being the medium of that energy, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think what the area where it really plays the steadiness role is where you can burn it as you need it, right? So now, and you can argue that a lot of things are storage, because wind is the storage of thermal energy from the sun in the atmosphere, right? Like ocean waves are a storage of wind and a steady output of wind. So energy is being stored from different forms to different forms. The real key aspect is you can really or deploy it when you need it, and it'll be there. And that's where, that's the limitation, right? You will never really get that with nature-powered renewable energy. To the full extent, you will not, you won't get 100%. So what humanity really has to do is make some level of compromise, because, so that compromise is, in my opinion, that compromise is ocean energy plus a little bit of storage, right? Not too much storage, because ocean energy makes your storage capacity and storage complexities much simpler, much less demanding. But I think that's the compromise that humanity has to make. Now, if you're using wind and solar plus ocean energy, that's great. That also allows for those alternatives. But really, ocean energy has to be part of that mix, and it really isn't at the moment. And we're still struggling to get proper, steady, clean energy to power our cities.
So if we put some numbers to it, like you say, when you have solar energy, something generates, say, 4 kilowatts a day or 6 kilowatts of energy per day, you can harness for a particular solar panel or something like that, or I don't know the exact numbers, but you have these metrics, right? Where you say per day you get X amount of energy for so many panels. So with this one device that you are installing for 75 homes, which you're saying is 40 kilowatts, so you're generating 40 kilowatts per day?
So 40 kilowatts is a measure of power. So that's 40 kilowatts per second is the average power that you're generating. So if you're talking about joules, that will be energy. Watts will be power. Kilowatt hours will be energy, right? So it's a very a lot of people it's very easy to get confused with that.
I think I was referring to watt hours or kilowatt hours is what I was trying to go to. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that's fair. I think the system needs to be more clear overall, so that
Yeah. So what is how many watt hours or kilowatt hours do you generate per day, per hour? What is the thing?
Almost 1 megawatt hours per day. I just did the calculation, but 960 kilowatt hours per day.
Wow.
Yeah. So one device, 960 kilowatt hours per day. And in Southeast Asia, that's about 75. Now it depends, right? If you go to California,
yeah, obviously.
What about California? What about North America? Poor thing, we are making him do math.
In California, it would be 33 homes. Yeah.
Well, they have double the consumption.
960 kilowatt hours of energy per day is enough to power 33 homes in California.
Yeah, 33 Californian homes, average Californian homes. So that's,
and 75 in Southeast Asia.
75 in Southeast Asia. Yeah. So you can see that the amount of use difference more,
almost double, yeah.
Yeah.
A little more than double.
More than double. Yeah. Unfortunate. It's not unfortunate, but it's just the way it is.
It's good. I think the more energy that society can consume, the faster it can actually move forward. We just need better sources of energy.
Exactly. That's exactly.
So there was a research done on development versus energy consumption, and even at the base level, when they were like kings and stuff, even then, the nations with the most amount of energy consumptions were the one that were leading the race. Right now, like US is leading the race, right? China is leading the race. They have enormous energy consumption because you're consuming something. That means you're producing it as well, and that means you're able to make stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's when I said unfortunately, that was wrong on my part. Yeah, no, definitely. But it goes by a case basis also. Like it also depends. Like in my opinion, there are certain things that we're spending too much energy on that we shouldn't be spending energy on. Military is one thing, that the US is spending way too much energy on, way too much oil, way too much way too many resources on. Anyway, that's a different conversation.
I think there's that very famous clip from the newsroom where he goes that US leads the world in defense spending, where they spend more money than the next 25 countries combined, or 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Something like that. It's the first episode of Newsroom, the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
There is this stat that is thrown out.
Yeah. It's insane.
Do you think ocean energy can power the entire world?
So theoretically, there is enough ocean energy to power the entire world 2 times around. Now, capturing it is not, it's a little unfeasible at the moment without the right disruptions, right? But we can't say it's impossible because you have to consider the possible disruptions that will take place. Our technology will disrupt. Okay, our next version of this technology is about 25 times larger. It's a much larger system. Let's call it that. It's a tremendously larger system, and we still haven't figured out the exact size because we're, from an R&D perspective, we're kind of working on it, but we're not really working on it. We're really focused on the first one. But anyway, the same system, much larger, in much more rough waters, will be able to generate tremendously more amount of energy. So let's say, okay, I'll give you an idea. If you scale the system 5 times, okay, the volume increases by 125 times. Okay, the energy output increases about 150 times. Okay, 5 times increase, about 150 times increase in power output. Okay, so that's the type of scaling that can take place. In the larger versions of our system, we're talking about thousands of homes, right? and that's definitely a realm of possibility. So we can, with the right disruptions, we can keep going up, and actually go on to power, potentially the large parts of the world. Now, I would, yeah. So it's definitely a possibility. I would never say impossible to these things, because you never know how the disruptions are going to go. You never know how we're going to invent and how we're going to solve these problems.
I just wanted to get back to the funding aspect. I think I might have missed that. Did I? How are you funding everything? Where are you getting the money from?
Yeah. So we have about $500,000 of funding at the moment. And we are, we have opened up a round, and we will, we have some commits at the moment. So we'll see how that plays out. It's an interesting market for funding in terms of financial markets. So we have enough runway to build our first pilot. So that allows us to really pursue the engineering side of things. The customer in Southeast Asia is the one who's been paying us already, and they're the ones who will be paying for the device in the first device, the pilot device. So that allows us to really, get to that point, even with, and the funding will really help us, scale and grow our intellectual portfolio, grow our team, so that we're very efficient, and we can get to all our dates in time. But currently we have the runway, even without the funding, to at least get to paid pilot. So we're looking good at the moment. But the strategy of changing the product from a hardware manufacturer and selling the hardware to, in an early stage, manufacturing and selling the patent, and basically working with that where we sell it to implement that patent, that I think was a real key cost reducer, because now your product is not as expensive. The cost of goods sold is really not that expensive, and we de-risk the business in a way. We're a technology provider at the moment.
Do you think ocean wave technology is going to change the world? Do you think ocean wave technology is good? Do you think it is bad? What is your opinion? Tell us in the comments below. So what is the timeline for implementation? If you had to say, for this Southeast Asian client that you're working with, you're saying that they're paying for the hardware for the pilot. What is your timeline on the pilot?
So March 2024 is so it's a pretty aggressive timeline. March 2024 is what we want to, is when we'll have the product built. And, of course, there's going to be some pluses and minuses. We'll see how things go. The first build is always more difficult, right? You'll always have something not go wrong, but something that slightly unexpected, and you'll have to, rework some stuff. So the first build will be interesting. I mean, we've built miniature versions several times, so we've kind of built the framework of how the actual system is going to be built. So March 2024 is when it's going to be built, and then we'll start doing component level testing. Systems level testing will happen in the water at that point.
So you're talking about the first build. It takes me back to the previous episode that we recorded. We recorded with this guy called Rishabh, who was doing oat milk in India. And he speaks about how when they were testing their product, they spent, I think, 15 months testing their product in order to make sure they could finally launch it. And he said it took us 4 months where we were testing in our kitchen. And we went to the factory and everything failed. So this is just your conversation about the first build is just taking me back to that.
Yeah. And, so here's the thing. Our testing has been continuous, right? Our testing in the wave tank, like the video showed, is a continuous process. And we've been iterating, putting it in the wave tank, generating, getting data from the wave tank. So that has been a continuous process. And once you go into the ocean, it's going to be a different ballgame. But the wave tank is is a very advanced tank. You can simulate all sorts of wave conditions. But it'll be a different ball game, and we'll learn a lot. We'll have some hiccups for sure. We'll learn a lot. Go from there.
Also, you have the advantage that it's just 200 meters out from shore, so I don't think it gets all that bad there.
Yeah.
It's still obviously very, very rough, and it can get really bad really quick, but I think that proximity to shore is working in your favor.
Absolutely. The extreme waves tend to get disrupted. Like the more extreme waves end up losing their energy when they get to shore because of how shallow it ends up being. So,
also for your larger prototype, are you also looking at being further out? Obviously.
Yeah, significantly further out, and we're still kind of thinking about it. We're not fully focused on that yet. So,
and just the last thing, what is there any effect on marine life?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, in general, a floating system with very minimal underwater components, or just simple mooring, is going to have minimal effect on marine life. Now, nothing is without zero effect, right? There's always going to be some effect. But our anchoring system itself can harbor marine life. So there are, and we haven't done a very thorough analysis on it yet, but a lot of anchors can be very conducive to corals and actually promote marine life, at the seabed. So that's definitely, something we're thinking about, something we're talking about. I think the net positive that comes out of it, these island communities slashing their need to ship in diesel, reducing the carbon footprint tremendously, and not having to burn diesel. This is just, a tremendous positive, net positive for Earth, and nothing comes without an effect, right?
The other thing that just popped into my head while you were talking about this, because you were talking about floating systems.
Yeah.
There is this other floating system which has been used for collecting ocean trash called SAVVYY.
SAVVYY, okay.
Yeah, which is a floating device which is meant for harbors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's this small little device, and I'm like, what if your device could incorporate something like that? So, 200 meters out to sea, it's also cleaning up while it's moored there and harvesting energy. So it's doing, 2 or 3 things. And now you're saying corals, and obviously, yes, anchors and tethered objects are very, very conducive to corals. And you see that very often when you're scuba diving and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That they have these areas which they've curated by putting in, anchors and like heavy objects, which corals have grown around. So that you call them artificially grown corals or man-made or whatever you call them. They end up looking very beautiful.
Yeah.
And the fish seem to take to it really well. So that's always.
Yeah, absolutely. And the floating object itself is highly dynamic, and dynamic systems are, they're not going to. When you have something that's constantly moving, you get less things that are attracted to it. So that's a good thing. Of course, we will get biofouling and corrosion, and our device can H36 steel is very good for corrosion, but you will get some biofouling which has to be cleaned and all that. So, overall, very minimal effect is what is expected, and these ancillary technologies, and you mentioned like trash collecting, like we can, that's a very good device. One of the conferences that I went to, and kind of interacted with, in this conference, I ended up interacting with a lot of different startups. They have a drone that collects trash. Okay, and it's a really cool idea. Drone in the water that collects, like a water drone, not a flying drone, but it collects trash, and it needs power, right? It can only go for 4 hours, and then it comes back, charges for like 2 hours, and then goes back out for 4 hours. Instead of doing that,
Make your system a docking system.
Yeah, make our system a docking system, or have we have a patent actually. Laminar Scientific has a patent on a system on a drone that is powered by waves. So as it travels, it's powered by waves. The vertical motion of the waves powering the system. So, again, we're hyper focused on our MVP, minimum viable product, hyper focused on this product. But that was something very attractive to them, and that was something that we really started a conversation, and we're pursuing. We'll see what happens. I can't make it promise.
So many implementations come to mind, right? You can think of putting it on ships when you talk about, it can charge while they're just standing, or when they're docked, and like ocean waves can keep charging a ship.
Absolutely,
right? So,
absolutely.
like
It's
number
our
of things.
Yeah, it's in our grand plan essentially. But we're taking it one step at a time. We're taking in terms of patenting, we patented a lot of things, but we really had to hone in on what exactly the world needed first, how we can prove ourselves first, from a implementation basis, not just from an idea and concept base. But so that's how we chose the Manta Wave. This is our first product. We're really focused on this. Patents last for 20 years. We'll get all the other ones later. Let's get to the easy, low-hanging fruit first, and then go there. That's the idea.
So March 24, we're going to have Narayan back on the podcast to explain how his product has worked and how amazing it is.
Absolutely. Thank you for this. But yeah.
So we have a tradition on our podcast. So at the end, we're going to ask you of two things. One would be an answer, one would be a question. So the previous guest asks you the question, how do you plan on dealing with the next change?
The team needs to be open-minded, right? Disruption is inevitable, right? Yeah. I've heard that being said several times. Like, if what the next change could be. It could be another type of device that is competing with us and is better than us. And, we want to be the folks that design that device that competes with our previous device. So we want to continually keep disrupting our own system. And we want to be the ones creating that change. So I'm kind of telling my team to be vigilant in that way and be active in innovation, so that we know what the next thing is going to be. Now, of course, we need to, as a startup, you shouldn't get pulled away from your product. It's very important to first implement your product. But I tell my team, just be vigilant. Soon we're going to have the next version, next generation. Make sure you're constantly innovating and thinking about innovation.